What's up, guys? It's Coach Banta again here with my 5 thoughts about the USATF championships. I reached out to a bunch of people recently and asked, what topics did you want me to cover and different things, masters athletes, how to deal with haters, ways we could improve the USATF, training thoughts, training ideas, and things like that. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. If we look at the USATF meet, one of the things I thought was really funny is how people always complain about the conditions. If we're not in San Diego, it's very unlikely the conditions are going to be perfect. If you are on a coast, and you're up north in the Northwest, if you look at the NCAA meet, the second day for both the men and the women was not great. I distinctly remember seeing Sydney McLaughlin getting hit in the head with hail when she's trying to warm up and get into her blocks for a race. So when we look at the weather in Des Moines, that's what outdoor sports are about. And unfortunately, in the world of track and field, the weather conditions can significantly affect, the outcome of a performance that has very small significant digits, which determine a successful performance or not. For example, and I have to look back at my notes, but, in the 200-meter dash finals, those took place, after a 3-hour rain delay into a headwind. And so those times were not great. That's the way that competition is. When you're in a championship setting, we're not so worried about times. We're worried about championships. Want proof? Look at any distance race in a championship format. If you look at Houlihan, she unleashed her kick in 2 races in the 1,500 and 5,000. And it was absolutely incredible. So thought number 1 is conditions are conditions. All right. Understand that they're never going to be great over the course of a week unless you're in San Diego. That's just the way it goes. Now, are there some opportunities there that maybe we could do something where we could create a optimal environment? I keep mentioning San Diego. Well, if you guys know, Chula Vista is one of the homes for our Olympic Training Center, massive track facility, but parking and stands for people to watch a track meet there don't exist. So whatever we do, we're going to have to, if you want a better track and field facility for your national championships, there's going to have to be some money invested. More money than the USATF has in their budget, which requires some funding and some resources that we've yet to attract to the sport. There are things that we can demand, there are things that we can expect, but until that money is there, that's never going to happen. So that is one of those things you have to understand. If you're at Eugene, if you're at Mount Sac, if you're at Chula Vista, which you can't compete at, if you're Des Moines, Iowa, it's going to be an issue. Now, one of the things I would say, because there was another comment about attendance, and the second thought is, how can we improve attendance? Well, you probably need to host a championship in a populated area with a track-crazy population. Well, in Eugene, you have an extraordinarily educated track population and a lot of history there, but it is a relative small town in comparison to, Atlanta, New York, Chicago, any of the cities in Texas, San Diego. So, you're going to have less people that are going to be able to make that trip. And one of the things everybody's got to remember is when you have to go from the East Coast to Florida, whatever, and you got to fly over the Rocky Mountains and go all the way up to the Northwest, that's an expensive trip. It takes a long time. It's hard to do. So one of the things that, long term probably would be to the benefit of the sport is that we as a body of people who support the USATF and everyone who's involved is that we should demand a long-term plan to create a facility that the USATF has that has seating and stands to create a really awesome experience for our championships and maybe 1 or 2 Diamond League events that you could guarantee that could be at every year. Does that mean you maybe need to convert the Olympic Training Center or a track somewhere else? For sure. But when we're reliant upon universities to provide us a place to host our championships, it's going to be tough. Now, whether or not the weather is a practical factor for that. Has nothing to do with the fact that it's probably time for us to get a facility that we can have a track meet at whenever we want to, whether the weather cooperates or not. I think that's important to do, and I think that it should be in a place where, you know, a lot of people can get to easily, and I think it should probably be in a very populated area, which has the hotels and facilities for people to stay a weekend or a couple weeks. You know, another thing that's really interesting about the USATF and track and field in general, especially in the United States, is the legalization of all sports betting. Could that be an opportunity for the USATF to make some money with some betting and things like that, much like horse racing? What does that look like when you have athletes who are individuals in a betting situation like that? If you look at prize fighting and boxing and things like that, there is a model there. I don't know that it's ideal, but it's an idea that we need to think about when we're moving forward, in terms of maybe that's a way to raise some revenue for the sport and to draw up some interest, because now people can bet on it. I mean, if you think about like sports like baseball with fantasy baseball, and I know we've kind of tried to do that stuff. Let'sRun.com has done their fantasy kind of thing for championships and stuff like that. But baseball is pretty boring in many respects. Not a lot going on. I know some people think the same thing about track and running around in circles, but I think it's extraordinarily exciting if you know what's going on. And the more you would be involved in knowing what's going on is if you had some sort of additional interest, revenue type system that people could play and participate in as fans, that would make it really, really exciting. And I think that there's some options through not necessarily so much gambling like we traditionally see it, but some other opportunities through games and interactions that we can have. The coverage. Otto Boland is the man. It's not just because he's my buddy. He does a really good job. The addition of Sonia Richards is great. The individuals that cover the meet do a great job, other than when, somebody's trying to steal somebody's bread after she wins the 5,000. It's probably not the greatest move. But the coverage is great. They do a good job. The one thing that I really like to see, which I know a lot of people in the distance community has complained about, is that we cut away for commercials for the distance races. I think it was a great thing to see the split screen and the sponsorships line up with the races and run those commercials when those races are going on. I think that's great. My one little tweak I would say that could be a big thing to fix the coverage would be to have the race itself be at least equal to, if not bigger on the screen than it would be for the commercial. I think that would really help the viewing and the coverage of the competition. Other things that the USATF can't do anything about, and track and field people can't do anything about, is that when you go on to the TV and you look for the schedule and sometimes things don't match up, that's really not track and field's fault. That's the people who are your cable providers maybe not providing the right instructions or things like that. And you guys have to understand, in a sport that can be rained out, and you have everybody there, and you don't own the facility, and you don't own the people who help you run off the meet, that becomes tough. So sometimes, it's like live TV and live radio. There are things that happen sometimes that people are just, not aware of. And again, you can't control some of those things. Now, the performances itself, some people were complaining that there were a lot of DNFs and did not finish and stuff like that, and athletes not, running in the finals. Look, you have to understand that people are making a business decision with their body. It is their physical body, and they have to make a business decision. If you have an opportunity to make tens of thousands of dollars just in appearance fees at meets in Europe later on in the summer, it makes more sense than risking an injury to run in the finals of a race that has crazy wind, tons of rain delay, not good conditions. You don't feel good because you've been sitting around for 3 hours. Your body is tight. For example, a lot of people were asking about Michael Norman and why didn't he run in the finals of the two? Because he doesn't have to. It isn't a world championship year. It isn't an Olympic year. We're not qualifying for a team. He is the fastest man in the world in the 400 meter dash this year. May not be the case later on. But this year he's the fastest man, and he just turned pro, which means he has a lot of leverage in terms to making, money for himself and becoming a professional. And you don't know what the future holds, but one thing you do know is if the conditions aren't right and you don't feel good and you're not confident about what the situation is, and it is not an Olympic year or a world championship year, you got to make a business decision. Some people would like to win the championship, and Amir Webb went out there 2 years in a row, 9 months after surgery, and went out there and hammered a 200 and won the championship. That's awesome for him. Pandieri won the 200 coming back off an injury. They made those decisions because to them that was important to them to reestablish themselves for confidence, and they won the championship. And yeah, you do make some money winning a championship or two, and that builds your resume and also provides you leverage maybe for sponsors later. But everybody's got individual situations that are different, so let's try not to criticize those people based on those decisions. Other things about the performances that I thought were really neat. We are becoming a big-time power in the hammer throw on the female side. Okay, Miss Price and Miss Berry are both from Missouri. Okay, and I got to tell you, Missouri's doing some big things in track and field as a state. And a guy who's a Missouri high school coach, you got Mike Rogers, you got the two girls in the hammer, you got Quigley in the steeple, you got the other young lady who didn't even know she was a track star. She thought she was going to be a soccer star and ends up winning a silver medal in the steeplechase and the Friedrich in the 3,000 meters. We've been very good as a state for a long time now. It's pretty cool when Iowa's just north of you and you can go compete there. It's probably not as nearly as hard of a trip, and it's in our time zone, so there are probably some advantages there for us. But there were a lot of really cool performances and definitely some interesting opportunities for athletes as we move forward in terms of what I think we can see. If you look at the young men in the sprints, I think we're pretty good there now. We were kind of looking for who's going to be the next great American sprinter, and we have a ton of them. So that's extraordinarily exciting, especially when you consider the conditions, and especially when you consider that, the gentleman who wins the 100-meter dash in the national championships, that's not even his main event. The 200-meter dash is his main event, and he's the national champ in the 100. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty cool. And, that's something that we should be excited about looking forward. We think about our team. We have a really great team. But one of the ways that I think that we can improve our team and improve our sport is at the youth level. One of the biggest complaints that I have in terms of the USATF, and it's not necessarily the organization's fault or any one particular thing. With difficult problems, it's never just one thing. It's a multitude of things. But when you look at summer track makes a lot of people not like track and field. The meets are really, really long. Things seem disorganized. Schedules are fluid. People are standing around for a really, really long time. Lots of heats of the same event. No one really knows what's happening. And one of the ways that I think that we could really improve this at the youth level is providing and spending some money in creating structures and putting people in place that's their job, period, to do, is to run the association meets and the regional meets and things like that. Because a lot of times we think about like the top stars and how that trickles down. There's no doubt that that's a big thing in terms of the popularity of track and field. But the thing that really does kind of lift that sport up a little bit more is the idea that we have a little bit more organization in our youth and our summer track and our things. So that experience is better, so that parents and athletes, when they're making decisions later on where they're going to spend their money, how they're going to, spend their time over the summer, that they feel a lot more comfortable. And I know we've done things with Safe Sport to make sure that the coaches that are working with our athletes are, passing background checks and all those kind of things. And that's fantastic. That's a great step in the right direction. But from an organizational standpoint, we should probably do something where if you have whoever's running the state timing systems at the state championships where these regionals and association meets are running, those people should probably be some of the people getting the first opportunities to host these meets. You should probably also try to mobilize those people who put on the state championships, In our state, it's Misha. And they do a state championship. They do a really, really good job. And then also mobilizing and paying officials to run off the events, not necessarily the parents, not necessarily a coach from a program, paying a little bit of money, $20 here, $30 here for that, would really help make things a lot better. The other thing I think that I would like to see is a comment was made, by a coach friend of mine about how, the U.S. national championships, there's a lot of stand around time or waiting time. There's not a lot of action, in the meet. And I know that we just talked about we want meets to go quicker, but at that level, those meets do run efficiently as long as there's no weather conditions, as we've already talked about before. So I think there would be a lot to be gained from having some of your Masters championships also there for some of your Masters athletes. I think it would also be awesome to have, and I know they've done this before in the past, but having your junior nationals going on at the same time, those are always great things to do, because you're getting a lot of action. And put that stuff on TV. Put the finals of the junior nationals on TV. Highlight those kids. That's really exciting stuff. People get that, like, oh my God, that kid ran that fast in high school. Like, I could barely break 50 seconds in the 400, and that high school kid's running 46:20, and he's only a sophomore. Oh my God. These are things that like we can do a better job of as a group. And I think that would really help us. So doing something to improve that system and organization at the youth level, so you have that from the ground up, and then the trickle down of the stars, that would really create a stronger system. The other thing is the USATF needs to do a better job in terms of its PR campaign with the people. And you're not going to make everybody happy. We already talked about this. There are haters everywhere. People are going to hate you no matter what, no matter how good or bad of a person you are. There are always going to be people that don't like you. You look at the president, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. People didn't like him. And looking back on it, it's like, man, that was one of our best presidents of all time. But there were people in his own party that didn't like him. There were Republicans that didn't like him. There were people all over, just because that's the way it's going to be. But anyway, the USATF can do a better job of being a little bit more transparent, getting some different voices into the mix, not being afraid to ask those people to come in, to do a talent search for leadership. Like when somebody's doing a really good job, organizing and managing different conferences around the country at a coaches association, or they do a good job of hosting a state championship, and they hear about these things, it's good to go out and bring those people in and have those people help you with ideas and things that they do that really allow them to run a really good meet at the lower levels, to attract talent to your sport. I mean, look at the sports that are growing. You look at a sport like lacrosse. You look at a sport, in certain sectors like ultimate frisbee. And I know, well, some of those sports aren't even on the same level as track and field. Absolutely, they're not. But what are they doing that's getting the attention, that's getting the interest of people, that more people want to do that? What are the good things that they're doing that really excites folks? Rivalries are a big thing. We should be spending a lot of time talking about that. And if you can't guarantee a rivalry because you don't know if a kid's going to run the finals of a race or not or whatever, maybe you build those things up. Maybe depending on, the athletes and who's really making some noise, and chasing records, maybe you offer more money, up for that type of thing. And I'm not talking, because we know, hey, we making a record, you're getting a little bit more cash. What I'm talking about is instead of having these slow races where everybody just sits and kicks, maybe you offer a little bit of money to a person that gets through the 800 first or the 1,000 first, and then all of a sudden you have a little bit more of an exciting race and people have to make some decisions, offer up money for that type of stuff, and because those are things that people complain about. One of the reasons why people go away to commercials when the race is a 5,000 or 10,000 is because everybody's just jogging until the last mile. So there's an opportunity right there where you could make something happen in terms of offering up that, because you can't have a rabbit, but you could certainly award someone who gets through the first half of the race the fastest or whatever. And you can make decisions on that per event. But that's something that should be done. The other thing is, and this is the last general thought, we got to make sure that the people who are our coaches at the national level and international level are, the best that they can be. But we as fans have to also understand that this is a professional sport. It isn't always going to go great, and it isn't always the coach's fault. There's so many things that go into the performances at a relay championship, at the Olympics or the World Championships and things like that. That isn't going to be something that they can control. The USATF can only control so much, and we have to understand that some of those things are just the nature of the beast of the sport of track and field. It is a 3-ring circus. Not everything is going to go great all the time. So when we look at the overall respect of our team, our national team, and our sport in our country, we have to understand that just like if you're a high school track coach, there's ups and there's downs. One kid's going to do something great. They're going to get a personal best. They're going to run really well. And that coach on that day is going to look like a genius. And then another athlete over here who you think is going to be the guaranteed superstar, and make big noise and win a championship or get an international medal. Sometimes that doesn't work out. It doesn't mean that the coach or the organization is bad. It's just the nature of the circumstances. And you have to look at our team as a whole and what we're doing as a program in terms of running season's best, personal best, medal count, all those types of things. So anyway, I know that's a lot. It was really random. Okay. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you have any thoughts or comments, please put your information down there on the comment bar and share what you guys think. Also, don't forget, push to 1,000. 1,000. I'm getting there. I'm pushing. Please check that book out. If you want your athletes one day to maybe run with some of the fastest people on the planet, 50 coaches around the world have contributed to this book. They've coached a lot of fast people. Let's rising tide raises all ships. Let's get that education out there and improve our athletes, okay, make them better. All right, guys, thank you for listening in. Please share this, if you will, with others, and let me know what your thoughts are.